News Radio 700 WLW.
Rock, you have a side hustle. You got your ESPN gig.
Got that. I had the book, of course, until all copies sold now, but had that going. I love a side hustle. I think I've told the story about in college. I had the side hustle where I was taking the aluminum cans from Indiana across lines into Michigan until I almost got arrested. I had that one going. And in fact, Ed, I have another side hustle that I know you're going to be interested in. Okay. It's not a beer. It's not a wine cooler, but it's a seltzer, okay, that has alcohol in it. We'll put some like fruit flavorings in it, and I want you to get in on this deal because this is going to be a great side hustle, and I think it's something the market is craving for.
And does this involve anything resembling White Claw? Because that sounds kind of familiar, son.
Well, no, it's much different. I'll explain later. But the point is, yeah.
Oh,
yes, yeah, exactly. But you and I saw this stat, Ed. 44% of Americans work a side hustle just to make ends meet. So a lot of people out there are doing it, and it makes you wonder, what does your main company have to feel? How do they feel about your side hustle?
exactly. That's the reason we brought in our workplace expert on the matter, Joel Patterson. Welcome back to the program. Always a pleasure.
Great to be here. Appreciate it, guys.
So, Joel, what do you think about that? You heard us talking there. Are there policies in place that some people will? Hey, look, if you're going to be even if you're like an Uber driver in the off hours, is that a problem for some people?
Well, it comes down to a lot, just like all of these kind of culture decisions. It comes down to the type of business that you're in, the industry you work in, the type of employees that you have. But I would tell you, this is from personal experience, because we've run into this a ton over the last couple of years. More often than not, this actually works in the favor of the business. Again, this is my experience, because I've probably got 7 or 8 people right now that have side hustles. And over the years, we've had one person that was clearly doing something that was a bit of a conflict of interest. And we had a conversation with him, and it was fixed. But the other ones, as an example, one of them started an Etsy store where she puts logos for, swag, T-shirts, hats, whatever it might be. And now she does that for us. We have another one that started a coffee company with her husband a couple of years ago. She supplies all of our coffee. Of course, we've got the Uber drivers, that kind of thing. Another one does personal styling for people. And what we've done is said, all right, in our handbook, it says a side hustle is okay as long as it doesn't affect the quality of your work and it's not a conflict of interest. As long as those two things are met, it seems like this is a situation that you can easily handle with a conversation, and you don't have to create this huge policy to try to protect yourself from.
Has having a side hustle, in your experience or in the experience maybe of other companies, obviously, as we've talked about, a company is worried you're not going to pay as much attention to your primary job. But are you saying that the data is showing, and your experience is showing, that that's not the case?
And I want to be careful here, because I also recognize the stat that you mentioned earlier, where 44% of people already have a side hustle. And I'm guessing that a lot of employers aren't aware of that. What I'm saying is that the companies that we work with and our experience internally, it hasn't shown that it's been a huge problem. That doesn't mean there aren't a lot of people out there that will take advantage, because we know that's true. And you probably know who those people are already. What I really caution against, though, is creating this big concern, because I think it's the same issue as when we went into COVID. All of a sudden, everybody's working from home. Are they really doing anything? What else have they got going on? I need to monitor them. Well, a lot of that is, some of that's true, but a lot of it was unfounded. And I think there's some fear around this in much the same way.
Joel Patterson is our guest. And Joel, let me ask you this. I think you're kind of maybe hinting at that right now. Let's say one of your female employees is making a little bit of money on whatever, OnlyFans. And she happens to be, doing what they do on that particular site. How do you handle that?
I'm not sure what OnlyFans is. Can you explain that for me?
Well, yeah. Well,
I'm kidding. I'm just
Rock,
let him go. Let him do it.
Rock and I are subscribers. That's all you need to know. But anyways, but let's say I'm just curious about that. How do you handle that in a workplace?
It's a great question. And I go back, and all I can do is put it in my situation. And in that situation where we're a technology services company, we're in lots of companies, that's not necessarily the brand that we want to give off, and we would have that conversation. It's not that I'm saying that's right or wrong, because I'm not in that business, but I do know that there are certain things around how we present ourselves that are important, and I'm sure there are a lot of companies doing the same thing. And so they've got to just look at whether or not it makes any sense to really dig into that. You got to look at these on an individual basis, because the other thing we haven't talked about is why. Why are they doing a side hustle? Because the obvious reason is money. They need some money, which makes sense to all of us in this day and age. But it could also potentially be a career pivot, that they're maybe this is a hobby, but hey, if I could make some money while I'm doing this in the evening, then maybe that is where I want to go in the long term. And as an employer, that's a risk. And so you want to make sure that you're having those conversations to understand, hey, do I just need to change something about their role in our company to get them to where they need to be? And they don't have to worry about a side hustle, because that's probably better for everyone all around. But again, every situation is going to be different in this one.
Okay. Joel, kind of to that point, is there any data or evidence you have of, someone has a side hustle where, look, that obviously takes some time, where instead of dedicating themselves to like their main company where they would have been able to maybe climb the ladder and ultimately end up at a higher spot, more responsibility, more pay, that maybe the side hustle hinders them from doing that? Any data or experience on that regard?
Yeah, I don't really have any data that supports that, but I can certainly say that I've got employees, in the past, actually. This was kind of before side hustle was even called that, where they had a business on the side that they ended up going to do full time with their wife or their husband. And so I do think that, to me, the biggest risk of this whole thing is that you're going to lose a valuable employee that all of a sudden realizes they can make money doing something different, or that makes them happier. And maybe that's where you need to send them, but you don't want to get surprised by that. And so those are some of the kind of flags that you should be keeping an eye out for, to make sure that you're taking care of your employees the way that you know you need to. And labor market's still tough. No matter what happens with the jobs report, it's still tough out there. So you don't want to spend your time recruiting new ones. Take care of the ones you've got currently, and sometimes that's giving them some flexibility.
So, Joel, would you suggest to companies like iHeart to maybe pay their employees a little bit more so they're not as incentivized to have a side hustle?
I actually have a good thing to share around this. I've heard that iHeart is expected to give everyone a raise that works there like 20%, something like that, and then around the next month or so. So stay tuned for that. But no, you can't make that comment just across the board. I think that what we've learned over the last couple of years is you have to look at that. While culture and engagement, all that stuff is super important, and that's the thing that will keep people from leaving, they still have to make sure that the monetary piece is in place, because you can't just replace it with that. That's a misnomer. You don't just get to have your ping pong tables and you pay people less. You got to do both, and you've got to be able to make sure that they feel like they're part of the team.
All right, with that, Joel Patterson, we'll let you go. He heads up the Vested Group. It's always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Y'all take care.